to drink it in. I want to watch it and just go like, oh my God, everything changed that summer. You know? Welcome to Feminist Frequency Radio. This is the show that asks you to be critical of the media you love. I'm Kat Spada, and we are back with a brand new season of feminist media criticism goodness. And what better way to kick off a season than by welcoming back very special guest, Anita Sarkeesian.
I'm a very special guest. Look at me. Did I say that last time too?
Probably.
It still doesn't feel like it. It still feels like I'm just on a extended hiatus, you know?
And it's still also like our dedicated hang time is to talk about Patrick Swayze. Spoiler alert. Yeah, I mean, I'll take any excuse I can. I was like, spiritually, I like the idea of starting every season with Patrick Swayze just so people know like where they should be meeting me. So
then we have to do Donnie Darko next because I just watched that for the first time this week.
First time?
Yeah. So that's another Swayze hit that I didn't know about.
Wow. Okay. Because I relearned how to play piano so that I could play Mad World from that soundtrack when I was in high school. And I fully cosplayed as Donnie Darko. I have so much to say. We're absolutely... Actually, maybe that'll be the Halloween episode. Might have like a bunch of people come on to talk
That'd be
about
great.
it. Because...
Absolutely.
AC, co-host of Macho's Fully Loaded season, also had only just watched it. So that might be a really fun thing. Or a live watch-along, perhaps, which is something we're testing out. So stay tuned. But yeah, you know, we're vaguely political. So we figured let's talk about the vaguely political movie Dirty Dancing.
I'm not sure who you are, but I don't want you to have anything to do with those people again.
Baby, I don't see you running up to Daddy telling him I'm your guy.
Well, with my father, it's complicated. I will tell him.
I don't believe you, baby.
She shows him all he can be.
You gotta stop it now.
I know what I'm doing, Penny.
I'm scared of everything. Most of all, I'm scared of walking out of this room and never feeling the rest of my whole life the way I feel when I'm with you.
What they learn from each other feels too good to be wrong. Dirty Dancing, starring Patrick Swayze, Jennifer Grey, and Cynthia Rhodes. Get ready for the time of your life.
And then you, Anita, bravely and gallingly suggested we also discuss Dirty Dancing 2 Havana Nights.
Look, okay, everybody who's ever listened to this podcast knows my deep love of Dirty Dancing. And then you're like, let's talk about it. And I was like, yeah, I'm happy to talk about it, but like, let's make it more.
Yeah.
Like let's make it a little more complicated.
And complicated indeed. Not just me post-COVID shot trying to read the Wikipedia page of U.S.-Cuban relations. Well, let's do some little plot overviews here. Emile Ardolino's 1987 film Dirty Dancing, written by Eleanor Bergstein, stars Jennifer Grey as Frances Baby Houseman, a teenager vacationing with her wealthy family in the Catskills in 1963. There, she meets a blue-collar dance instructor with a chip on his shoulder, Patrick Swayze as Johnny Castle. Baby goes from not even being able to dance the pachanga to executing a perfect lift, while learning about class treachery and illegal abortions along the way. Nearly 2 decades later, hubris and director Guy Ferland brought us a sequel named Dirty Dancing 2 Havana Nights, set 5 years before the events of the original, transposing the story of star-crossed lovers to the eve of the Cuban Revolution. Romola Garai and Diego Luna star, with a cameo by Patrick Swayze that is by far the best part of the movie.
Wait, you didn't love the part where they're in the club dancing and she goes, Cuba!
Dancing to like a pop star of 2004, Maya.
Oh my God, I can't wait. See, aren't you so glad we're doing it?
Now, I could have gone my whole life never watching Dirty Dancing 2 Havana Nights.
I disagree.
Because I like you, am obsessed with Dirty Dancing. It is formative. It is integral to like growing up and being a person for me. I remember when TBS would play literally from noon to midnight, just Dirty Dancing 6 times in a row, and I would watch all 12 hours of it. And then I was a high school senior when they announced we're making another one and we're going to Havana. And my friends and I just thought it was so... My friends and I who were like, we're going to get into film as adults. We were like, this is the death of art because why Havana Nights? Like, what's next? Dirty Dancing 3, Tiananmen Square. This, I think, led to us imagining, like, what if they rebooted all of these, like, civil rights type stories, which, you know, they would. Like, we are right. It is the death of art, and also get used to it. But, you know, now, like, it's funny watching this almost 20 years later and thinking, like, oh, this is like retro in the way that Dirty Dancing was retro.
Yeah. Okay. So here, okay. A couple things. So, okay, this is going to end up being Dirty Dancing 2, and I want to at least acknowledge Dirty Dancing.
We will talk about both. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. But so when I started admitting that I love Dirty Dancing as an adult,
yeah,
people were like, huh. Right. Like, they're really judgy about it. And like, you know, like they're really like, that's not like, I maybe watched it as a kid. It's like a rom-com. It's not a comedy, but whatever. And there's something interesting in the last several years where if I say that, they're like, yeah, totally, Dirty Dancing. Great. Like, there's been a shift in the public perception of Dirty Dancing, which I think is very interesting. And it's weird to me that this movie had, like, everybody knows it. There's no one that's ever been like, what movie are you talking about?
Yeah,
you know, like, like not everyone has seen it and not everyone like remembers it, but it's so prevalent and it's not, I love it so much and we can talk about why, but it's not like a great movie. Like, it's not like I don't quite understand the lasting impact that this movie has had, despite the fact that I've seen it, like, I can't even count how many times, probably like 5 times a year. I've seen it in re-releases in movie theaters. I've seen it at park screenings. I've seen the Broadway show of it, which is fucking atrocious. Like, every time I can get my hands on something Dirty Dancing, like, I will do it, you know? But yeah, so there is a cultural, and it's not even like a cult thing, right? It's just like people know this movie and like there's just a lot more love for it lately. So one thing that I think is interesting, and when I would defend myself, one, I don't need to defend liking anything because you can just like what you like. But as an adult, I was like, this movie is actually really political. And I mean, really is being big quotes, right? It is like vaguely political, but it's interesting that they did try to fit in, like most dance movies, right? Like, I've watched a lot of them. They tend to have some kind of usually class, and then a secondary element of race. Like most dance movies will have that kind of social, cultural commentary. Is it done well? You typically not. Is it kind of crass? Usually. But that's I think a staple of kind of dance films in some way. But then this movie also deals with abortion, which as a child, I didn't understand why that was, because I grew up with abortion being legal at the time. And so I didn't understand what this was all about. And it also deals with the like sexual agency of a young woman.
Yeah.
Which I didn't quite understand until I got older either, that like she really owns her desires in a way that I think is like a great message and really exciting. And she gets to like dictate the terms of her sexual experience.
I think that there's really something to how like dance movies touch on politics in a way that I think is like always there. Every time there's a dance movie, I mean, you can't just step up. You have to step up to the streets. You have to step up Rev 4 Lucian.
You have to merge like street dance and traditional dance, right? Like that's always a thing. It's like hip hop and ballet or whatever.
There is a moment in Dirty Dancing 2 that I was like, this could be from Save the Last Dance, the Julia Stiles is a ballet dancer who like learns about Black people movie.
Yeah. That was the exact movie I was thinking of when I said that.
Yes. But to go to the original Dirty Dancing, like that's one that like, it felt like part of the canon for me. And then as I got older, like the movie did grow with me too, where I started to learn about the fact that like it was a banned movie for people. Like it was very, the fact that they talked about abortion, and I actually wonder, like, do they say, I don't think they say the word abortion in it, but it's clear what they're talking about once you know what they're talking about.
Yeah, like there's a line in it where she asks her dad for money and he says, "Is it illegal?" And she goes, "No, Daddy."
Yeah.
I know this movie like inside and out.
And
I didn't understand that. I was like, why is she's just going to a doctor? I don't understand why it's illegal.
Yeah, and like there is such a I was thinking about this with God, this is such a wild jump, but I was telling someone, when I was a teenager, I used to watch those Duggar specials with all 18 kids and counting or whatever. And I was like, God, why did I? Like, my family wasn't religious in that kind of way where we looked at them and said, we're like them or we want to be like them. But I realized that as a young girl and young teenager, like anything to do with pregnancy was really exciting for me because it spoke of like illicit sex in it and what happens when something doesn't go the way you want it to go. And so Dirty Dancing has this peril in it that like, even before you really understand what's happening, when you see Penny unwell and that it's so bad that baby goes to her father to get his help, like that was always really, really striking for me. And that question, like, in as much as I think we should talk about, like, baby doesn't necessarily model the politics that she thinks she believes in, but that question of like, what do you do when you have to make an ethical decision that's like scary to make or like new or frightening or whatever. And at the same time, she's like discovering sexuality and falling for someone. And those are like, it's like every possible emotion she could be feeling is just being pushed up to the max. And I think that's what makes that movie so like, I want to drink it in. I want to watch it and just go like, oh my God, what everything changed that summer. You know?
She's a totally new person.
Yes.
So stylistically, Dirty Dancing is also weird because it is a movie that takes place in the 60s, but it is such an 80s movie.
Yes.
And other than the like outfits, especially Penny's outfits, I think they're fantastic. It doesn't feel like it's the 60s. There's a passing line to before Kennedy was shot. There's a passing line about this stupid rich guy talking about going on freedom rides and shit, you know, and you're just like, oh my God. Like it's so, the civil rights backdrop of this is literally one line. But the thing stylistically, filmmaking wise, is the music is half oldies, half 80s.
Yes.
So I think that also influences us being like, this is a fucking 80s movie, right? I mean, it was like 89. I think it was like the end of the 80s, but, or 87 or something like that. So that's a thing. It's weird. It's a weird thing. In Dirty Dancing 2, it feels like they went, hey, what are all the like the stylistic choices that were made in Dirty Dancing, and let's do them here to a T and badly executed. And it's fascinating to me because the history of Dirty Dancing 2 was that it was originally a very serious political piece. It was based on a true story about a woman whose family moved to Cuba right before the revolution, a white American family. And that got taken. Every single word got changed and it got turned into Dirty Dancing 2. So like that history makes sense in terms of the fact that they're like, we're going to micro-impose all of these things, and it just aggressively doesn't work.
Yeah. Like there's something about the first time you see Johnny Castle dancing with Penny and Baby, because they're teaching Baby how to dance. And they're in these like flash dance leotards with sparkly belts. That's like, what? Like, this is...
It's so 80s.
And they just have, like, ratted hair. Like, they don't even have, like, teased out 80s hair. And then, but watching that where it's just like, I don't remember a time before seeing Dirty Dancing. So then watch Dirty Dancing 2 and see the, like, wet seal clothing.
Yeah.
And I swear there is a, like, Cuban tinged cover, like it's just instrumental of either She's Like the Wind or Hungry Eyes in this soundtrack, where I was like, da na na.
It's the Time of Your Life song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, so they're taking like it's a Russian doll of a stylistic choice. But I think what's also something is that, like, I felt like Dirty Dancing 2 is so much more sexless than the original. And that was striking to me. I was like, I feel like this doesn't go far enough to, like, actually feeling like desire is a part of what is happening here. It's really just about, like, well, I'm a studious girl, but now I'm a dancer instead of like, I'm aroused and I need to push that further and figure out where that goes.
Which, bless Diego Luna, I think he's fucking great. He's the only thing in that movie that's like is somewhat enjoyable, when that's hard to say because the whole movie kind of sucks. But like the they do these things with the comparisons that I'm drawing are like the music, right? So it's got like I'm guessing Cuban music, like they're, you know, whatever, probably. I don't trust anything to be authentic in this movie. So it's like, they filmed it in Puerto Rico. Well, not that they could film
Diego
it in Cuba
Luna's
at the time.
Mexican.
Yeah. But so they have like maybe time appropriate music of the region, but then they have all of this like 2000s, late 90s music mixed in, and it's so jarring and weird. Like it doesn't, because the sets and the costumes and everything are so time period specific, whereas Dirty Dancing kind of straddles this like line that's not too deep into the 60s. So in Dirty Dancing 2, it doesn't quite work. They do 5 million montages that are terribly cut. They're so boring. And in them, you can also see a lot of like comparisons. So like the scene you were just talking about with Penny, Baby, and Patrick.
Yes.
Like dancing, the three of them, they do a scene like that with her little sister, which doesn't make any sense, right? They do the scene where they're trying to learn to dance together and they're frustrated with each other. They do the scene. There's another thing where like, so at the end of Dirty Dancing 2, it's a competition, right? There's 2 big dance numbers. And the first dance number, like she's wearing this beautiful orange dress that I was like, I want that dress. I would kill that dress. And then in the second one, which is the finale dress, it's so bland and not interesting. And I was like, oh, it's supposed to be like Baby's dress at the end of Dirty Dancing, which is a boring pink dress. And I was like, that's such a weird choice for this. Like, it's nobody's going to notice that except for like me. And, you know, and like, it doesn't really work. And so there's just a lot of little things like that I was like, that's Dirty Dancing, that's Dirty Dancing, that's Dirty Dancing, like over and over again, but like way worse and like not well done at all.
Yeah, like even the boyfriend, the sort of, or like whoever the quote unquote acceptable boy is.
Jonathan Jackson,
like in this movie, like he like rips her strap on her dress. And again, like there's not a lot of like that scene isn't shot or written or performed in a way where I feel like this is a really perilous moment. Like it just does kind of seem like he was trying to kiss her and she's saying no, and then her dress rips. Whereas like in the original, these nefarious men who are like, quote unquote, like the good guys, the ones Baby should be attracted to, are like actually, I think, quite devious. But I think that's the thing with both of these movies, and I'm certainly better versed in the first one, is like, yeah, they do have 1 or 2 throwaway lines to the like political climate, but what they do try to set up is that like Baby is a very politically minded person, but she has never had to really experience what politics mean in her life. And now she's confronted by class, and she's confronted by legality of abortion, and she's confronted by, I mean, like, to some extent, sex work, you know, like she's dealing with really seeing that, like, people aren't born on third base the way that she is. And that, I think, is also a big tension. Like, in this movie, it starts, the open in the sequel, it starts with a line that's like, here's everything I know about Cuba. My friends aren't here. I have to start a new school year. And some guy's trying to overthrow the government. But, like, both of them, what neither movie ever, like, well, the first movie does a better job, obviously, of everything. But both of them, like, at the end of the movie, right, the question is, like, baby, what now? Like, now do you just go to Smith and you just move on with your life? And Romola Garai in Dirty Dancing 2, like, what now? You leave Cuba, and then what? Like, is there any lasting impact of having, like, gone and lived through a revolution in Cuba? Is there any lasting impact to, like, I realized that a lot of people have to make difficult choices because of the lives they're born into, and I really don't. Like,
yeah, and you know, framing it like that, I think Dirty Dancing works better. The original works better because it is like it is more micro in terms of its politics, right? It's not dealing with civil rights as the backdrop of this movie. It's not dealing with race, which is, you know, also it could have, but it didn't.
Yeah.
Whereas setting it to the backdrop of the Cuban Revolution is huge. And they just did such a disservice to that, and they weren't able to integrate that in a, like, authentic way. And I think that that's a little bit of a difference in why, like, the politics of Dirty Dancing kind of works better, is because they took less swings, right? Like, they were trying to do less. And yeah, you know, like, the whole movie sounds like it was 80 yard, first of all, but they, you know, like, towards the end, there is a political opinion that arises from it, but the whole movie is very centrist in Javier's character being like, I have to take care of my family, but my brother gets to be a revolutionary and blah, 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 blah. And he's, like, critical of him. And him and his brothers, who are the revolutionaries, are, like, assholes and not accepting. And you're like, yeah, but they shouldn't be. These fucking white people keep coming here and using all their resources and shit. And so, but they're framed as, like, not giving her a chance because she's one of the nice ones, you know, like that kind of shit. And I was just, like, I was so over it.
Yeah. And, like, the age, I think, is also a question mark in both of these movies. Like, maybe if it's, like, their 16-year-old brother and he is a waiter or a busboy and they're like, he's getting his rocks off with this girl right now, like, maybe they would give him that, like, pass. But then they keep saying, like, our father died for this. Like, it is really, there's, like, executions and stuff in this movie that, yeah, you can't then, like, cut to John Slattery and Celia Ward going, woo, in a dance contest and feel like, great, I hope they aren't CIA contractors. Like, we have no idea what the parents do. There's also, like, we talked about this a little bit in the Macho season. We talked about, like, the sexualization of the blue collar man. I mean, we were talking about it for, like, Men Who Love Men content, but that is also, I think, a piece of this, which then gets racialized in the second movie, where she's attracted to him and there's various levels to that. And I feel like in the first movie, like, one thing, this is about to be me, like, being very aesthetically focused for a few minutes, but I definitely always grew up, like, seeing myself in Jennifer Grey and thinking, like, wow, the sort of mousy girl, right, blossoms. She, like, starts to
she wears short shorts.
Yeah, she wears short shorts. She carries a watermelon, but she starts to dress and act more confidently, like, be in her body. And then this man who everyone agrees is just sexuality personified falls for her because of her spirit, like, because she wants to fight for the right thing, because she wants to stand up for people, and that is what like ultimately makes him fall for her. Like that is a huge part of the movie for me. And in the sequel, yeah, I'm just like, yeah, like hot people be fucking. Like,
well, but they do try to do that in Dirty Dancing 2 badly. You know, like there's a scene at the end of Dirty Dancing where Johnny finds Baby like hiding away because he got fired or whatever. And she's like, oh my God, it's going to be okay. They can't, you know, they're not going to get rid of you. And he's like, baby, I'm out. And she's like, I did it all for nothing. Yeah. We should do a dramatic reading of this movie.
I would love
I did it for nothing. And he's like, no, baby, nobody's ever done anything like that for me. And and like talking
2 weeks ago, I'm bouncing quarters. I know, I can keep. I know, I'm ready. Yeah. I'm ready.
Juju beads. I'm eating juju beads, and then there's stuffing diamonds down my pockets. So that scene though is where he's like, nobody's ever done anything like that for me. Nobody's ever gone out on a limb for me. What you do, baby, is you care, which is kind of a problem if I'm going to pick this apart, because like she's doing the paternalistic white person thing as I'm going to come in and save you. And she's being rewarded for that shitty behavior instead of learning that that's a problem. They do that in Dirty Dancing 2, where she's trying to like save him. Like, I'm going to get you in this dance competition. And then there's a scene at the very end where like they have this exchange where it's like, you know, like, it's cool that you care about these things, but I have to stay here anyways or whatever. And it just doesn't, it lands dead. And there's also this scene where she's like, I'm going to give up my entire life and stay here and have babies with you. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
You know, like but they are trying to make these like good white girls who care about other people and are trying to use their power to do good for these poor working class and brown folks. And that part's gross in both of them, I think. But in Dirty Dancing 2 specifically, like, it's really clunky and like it feels worse because it's done so badly. I guess that's kind of fucked up to say. They're both bad. That's a message in it, you know?
They also, like, that whole conversation in Dirty Dancing 2 was so stupid, but at least I was like, well, this is how teenagers think. Like, this is where you're like, yeah, my family is going to move back to the US and you're going to come with us, and then we'll send for your whole family and everything's going to work out. But then I do feel like it at least concludes more believably.
Yeah,
of like
I agree with that.
Them acknowledging like, this has been a great few months and hopefully we'll see each other again. But
it's not the part where she's like, you'll come over and we'll win and it'll be great. It's the after that where she's like, well, I'm just going to stay here with you then.
Right.
And you're just like, are you? Is that what's going to happen?
Probably not. There is an ethnic component in the first movie that they barely do touch, which is the Jewish cultural element of like, they're at a Jewish resort in the Catskills, which my personal relationship to is that my dad grew up in the Catskills as a Gentile who was a waiter at a Catskills Jewish resort. Okay. And would tell me about like learning Yiddish so that he could talk to some of the clientele and make sure to get their orders right and have a full menu of like Eastern European and like Jewish diaspora food on the menu. And that's always been culturally interesting to me from that perspective. But like, they never really touch on the fact that these are like wealthy New York City Jewish families who come here. There's a waiter who I believe is also supposed to be like a Jewish character. So that's one reason why he appeals to the parents. But that Johnny and maybe all of the other like staffers who we see Dirty Dancing in the staff quarters are just like blue collar, not Jewish. Like, that ethnic piece never really gets touched.
Yeah, not at all.
But also like, it's more complex than just saying like a white blonde American in Cuba. Yeah,
absolutely. And so that character you're talking about, there's a great scene in it where he tells her to read Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead, and she's like, you can go fucking shove this up your ass. But at some point, all of the servers, the owner of the resort, is like, I picked you all out from Yale and Princeton and Harvard. Right. And you're like, why are they doing that? I don't understand if they're going there. Why would they be working here? And he says at some point, I've saved up enough tips for my Alfa Romeo. And I'm like, what kind of tips are you getting, man? That's fucking wild.
I don't think he's getting diamonds in his pockets.
No, I don't think he is either.
Also, this is absolutely nothing to do with anything, but Dirty Dancing has this incredible like G plot of the old couple that's stealing
yes.
wallets from like all of the Borscht Belt resorts. And I don't know why I just remembered that and felt the need to bring it up, but
it's fantastic. I love it. I also like it's so weird. Also, when they're doing the dance at the other hotel, and it's so bad, like it is so atrociously bad, and they're like, "No, you did good. It was great." And like, though that couple walks in, and you're just like, "Oh, well, obviously they have something to do with something, right? Moving forward." And you see them drop the purse full of wallets. Yeah. Anyways, whatever that. But they're so cute. And then you're like, and you're like rooting for them because you're like, that's fucking dope. Good for you, you know? I read today about how apparently there are retired couples who just live on cruises instead of keeping their homes because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
Anyways, it just reminded me of them.
Yeah, it is that is like a heartbreaking, but it's also like, man, what are we doing here?
Mm-hmm. Super weird.
Let's talk a little bit about the production of both of these movies. I know that like there's, just like I said, that like Jennifer Grey was like a figure to me because of this, and she's like a nepo baby and everything, but one thing that always struck me is like she had a career-ending nose job, and like that I always found to be so fascinating, that like as an actress, especially as somebody who grew up in show business, her dad's like a million-time Tony winner, that and he's in Cabaret. It's probably like the film role everyone would know him most. That she goes into like, well, here's the way for me to be like a star. And then it's like, no, you were supposed to be a character actress all along. So that always kind of struck me. But there's a lot of other stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's interesting. That piece of it's interesting because so when I was growing up in the 90s, nose jobs were a big deal. Like everyone was talking about them. And coming from a family where we do not have traditional white Eurocentric noses, that like it came up between me and my sister sometimes. And it's interesting to me that was her downfall, and it could be used as an excuse, right? To like sideline her, right? Because lots of celebrities got nose jobs and they didn't lose their careers over it or whatever. And so I think there's other things at play that make it complicated, but like she straightened her hair, she got a nose job, like she really was trying to fit into the aesthetic, which makes sense for female actors in general, you know, and the pressures around that. And it, I don't know, like I don't buy that was like completely why she wasn't working anymore, but I wouldn't doubt that like aesthetics had something to do with it. And it's also sad, you know, like you grow up watching a movie like this and being like, she's the star and she's, you know, like she's the love interest and whatever, and like she wasn't good enough as a human. And like all of us who watched that really young and know that are kind of like, well, that sucks.
And she did like before the nose job, right? She had character roles. She was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and she in like Red Dawn, right? That was the other Patrick Swayze movie that she has like a small role in. But yeah, like it could be that she was not going to be a lead or a romantic lead, but that this movie happens to work because of everything that sets up. But I know that you mentioned that there was like not a great working relationship in our notes between her and Patrick Swayze.
So they worked together on Red Dawn, and she didn't want to work with him again because some shit went down on that set, and he and whoever talked her into doing it. And apparently they had like really amazing chemistry in their test shoots. But on set, they were just like fucking going at it constantly. And like they were trying to, like the director was really trying to, the director and the writer was like a hugely like actively part of creating this movie, was constantly trying to get them to like get along and find that chemistry again. Cause they clearly have on-screen chemistry. But there is also stuff where like, and this is the stuff I don't want to know. This is not 100%, but I think this is true. You know the scene where in the like training montage where he is caressing her armpit down over and over again. Apparently that was real. So like he was getting mad, like that was him being angry at her, like Patrick Swayze at Jennifer Grey, not the characters. And I was like, ugh, I don't want to know that. That sounds fucking terrible, you know? And like then they use it in the movie and it's just like feels a little gross to me. So, you know, there's stuff like that. The filming of it is extremely fraught. Like they could only get the place where they shot it for like 14 days. So they had to shoot the rest of it at some like, I don't know, boys camp or something somewhere else. They had like 40-ish days to shoot the whole thing. The scene where it went from like extreme heat waves to extreme frost. And so when they did the water scene, it was like massively freezing. Like people were in like winter jackets and shit and they're like in the water. So it was just like a really fraught production.
Yeah. I remember from DVD special features that story about the arm movement, the like tickle that she keeps breaking and laughing, and he gets really frustrated and he keeps kind of walking off. That was real. It makes me think about like, I was a dancer growing up and there would always be like married dance teachers like that had this very like kind of aggressive relationship that like made them incredible dance partners. And I think about the fact that Patrick Swayze was married to a dancer as well, and that like there is, especially for ballroom and like traditional dance, like there is such rigidity and structure, and it's like militaristic in the way that you have to have perfection in it. And I can only imagine that like, oh, when I'm doing acting, but we're doing dancing. Yeah. And this is what I know
Apparently,
about.
He like had to tone down his skills so that he didn't look like a professional dancer in it. And he did some like body modification stuff, like bindings to make him look like leaner, because he is supposed to be way younger than he is. And she was like 27 pretending to be 16, you know, like he was like only a few years younger than like the mom or something like that, you know?
I also, just about their chemistry was, because this is something that I remember hearing that Jennifer Grey did in her audition, and that also was kept in the movie. They like had her do it again for the shot, is that when she goes to his room after the dramatic events and she goes to dance with him, and that's when they like first have sex, is that they're dancing and she walks around him and like appreciates his body, and then she rubs her hand across his butt. And that she had done that in the audition, and that wasn't like part of the choreography they'd given her, but that she touched his butt. They were like, okay, we need you to do that again.
Yeah. And apparently, like, when they were fighting and didn't have chemistry, they made them watch the screen test again. So to remind them that they were good. Other like little things is, so Patrick Swayze is like known for wanting to do his own stunts. And like, I think we talked about this in Point Break about how he like wasn't allowed to do his own stunts. So he went on the weekend and did it himself with his own film crew and shit. Like, because the insurance wouldn't cover him jumping out of a plane.
Right.
So in this, he wanted to do his own stunts as well, which there's not a lot of stunts, but there is the part where they're walking on the log. So that's a stunt. That's Jennifer Grey as a stunt double on that one. But he actually fell and like popped his knee out or some shit. Like he injured his leg during that process, which for a short shoot, you know, like it sounded like a very difficult shoot to make this movie. And I think there's also something else about how they couldn't get it picked up by a production company or a distributor. And so the company that V something, they were like really new and they were trying to get into home video. And so I think that this was one of the highest, like the first highest selling home video movies as well.
When Patrick Swayze shows up in Havana Nights, it's never spelled out that that's supposed to be Johnny Castle or not. Like,
it can't be.
It can't be because he's 20 years older.
Yeah, the timeline doesn't work at all.
No, and like, but you said he tones his dancing down in Dirty Dancing. The fact that in 2004, when he is dancing, like you see him dancing with a student, it's like, oh, this guy's the best dancer in this entire movie. Like, he's so good. You cannot look away from him in a way that, like, I think Diego Luna's adorable, but like,
but he's not a dancer. He like trained for like weeks beforehand to do with the piddly bit that he did, you know?
Right. Like when he like rubs his hand like down her.
Oh yeah, that's the other one. That felt like the armpit thing, like over and over again. I was like, this is not sexy. I don't know what you're trying to do. Like, it's not working.
It doesn't tell you anything. It's just like, oh, is he trying to touch her boob? Like, I don't really get it. But when Patrick Swayze shows up, first of all, like you said about poorly edited montages, he literally is like, hey, young girl, do you want to participate in this dance contest? Why don't you dance with me? And then like they switch coverage, like they switch the angle, and the dozen women that were in the room just aren't there anymore. There was no script supervisor. Like, there's no continuity in this movie. But again, it's like, oh, he's just the most magnetic person on screen. But I did want to mention also, like, I don't know if you have the same thing where every time a movie starts with the Miramax logo, I just go like, oh shit. Like, I know that there was some bullshit involved. And the thing that first like stood out to me, of course, the fact that like they acquired a script that had nothing to do with the final product. They shoehorned it into existing IP that they wanted to monetize. Like, that's a tale as old as time in Hollywood. But I saw this line on Wikipedia that was like, this was British actress Romola Garai's first Hollywood movie, and she almost quit acting afterwards. And I was like, that tells me more than what the rest of the
Wikipedia she was a part of coming out against Weinstein.
Yeah, I mean, she was 18 years old. At least from what I've read, like, he at the very least answered his tried to get her to meet him in a hotel room, answered in a robe, and she was like, what is happening? This is inappropriate. But also, back to the Jennifer Grey and the body image tyranny of all days, but certainly the 80s, 90s, and aughts, is that she was told by production that she was not skinny enough, like, repeatedly. And she kept saying, like, well, why did you cast me then? Like, if you wanted a skinny girl. And watching this, and she's like maybe a size 4. So, of course, it's like...
Probably barely even that.
Yeah. So, I mean, literally, it's just that she has like a little bit of boobs. I think that's what counts as like not being skinny in this time in 2004 when, as we know, you look at like... If you look back at magazine covers from that era and how mercifully things are...
Yeah, this was the era of like the waif fashion time, which I just found it. Can I digress slightly?
Yeah, please.
So I just watched The Supermodels. It's a 4-episode docuseries on Apple, and it follows around models that you've heard of: Naomi Campbell and Linda Evangelista,
Christy Brinkley.
No.
I'm just thinking of that era because they are a fascinating bunch.
Yeah,
I've got to watch that.
The fucking Cindy Crawford and the other one who you absolutely know and whose name I'm completely forgetting right now. But so like we grew up with them as like household names, and it was, to me, the documentary isn't like a well-made documentary, but I'm interested in the cultural context of this thing that like I vaguely remember from childhood. So as their superstardom was waning in terms of how their popularity, the Soviet Union fell. And so as designers started getting frustrated that people cared more about the models than the clothes, agents went scouring through those former Soviet Union countries and just grabbing everyone off the street that is Polina like model Poroskova quality. And so they're like, we can get 40 models that look exactly the same instead of $1 bajillion for one, superstar. And that's when ushered in that sort of waif look. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's so interesting to me in terms of how like political climate influences fashion and pop culture and trends and everything.
That is fascinating. I have to watch that. I had a really messy thought recently. I'm just going to admit it on the air, which is Kaya Gerber, who's Cindy Crawford's daughter. I haven't seen the movie Bottoms, but she's like one of the hot girls in the movie that the main teenagers are like trying to woo, I think. And she looks so much like her mother's.
Really?
Yes.
Kaya
Oh my
Gerber.
God.
Okay. So when I was in the theater, yeah. Okay. So I kept thinking that she looked exactly like Rachel Bilson because I watched the fuck out of Heart of Dixie like a million times. And I was like, I can't get over how much she looks like her. And my friend who watched it with me was like, she looks exactly like a young Cindy Crawford. Yeah. And I was like, I don't see that. When I watched the documentary and saw some really young photos of Cindy Crawford, I was like, holy shit, she looks exactly like that. So that's wild. No wonder this all makes sense now.
Well, my messy thought was that like a generation later, there are probably young queer girls who watch that movie and who have a sexual awakening of Kaya Gerber. And I remember very strongly when Cindy Crawford posed for a magazine cover with KD Lang, pretending to give her like a barbershop shave. And that absolutely broke my brain wide open when I was a young child. And so I was like, oh man, like the queer awakening of the Cindy Crawford bloodline continues.
Yeah. Oh, that's wild. I didn't connect that. That was who that was.
Also, now that like Maya Hawke is kind of getting a little bit more famous, also I'm seeing so much like young Uma Thurman in her. The only last thing I kind of wanted to say about this is the last thing I want to say about Dirty Dancing 2 Havana Nights, is that it reminded me to revisit a movie that I had seen in college called I Am Cuba. Have you ever seen this? A black and white it's like 1963-64. It's a Soviet movie. I don't think anybody really paid attention to it until like the 90s when these like auteur filmmakers like Scorsese were like, oh, there's this like really influential movie that should be restored. And I have not ever sat through all like 2.5 hours of it, and I probably never will. But like, if you watch it, it is incredibly visually stunning. And so watching Havana Nights, I was like, I want to revisit this movie and remember, like, what did this place actually look like? And how were people trying to show that? So there's like, probably famously, it's in the first like 10 minutes, is a very impressive tracking shot that goes from like a rooftop, like down several floors into a pool party, underwater into the pool. And it shows this kind of like lavish luxury of this Cuban party that's happening. And they just showed you some real impoverished people in Cuba who are sugar farmers. And then it cuts to like an Afro-Cuban jazz club. Like it really is kind of a very visually like a sensual movie. They also shot it on like Soviet infrared cameras, so everything looks like in high relief. So it's a strange thing, but it's on Canopy. So if you have a library card and you get Canopy, you can watch stuff for free. And cool. I would definitely recommend, we'll link it in the show notes. I would recommend like pull it up, watch the first 15 minutes, and then like scrub around and see if you like find any sequences that you think are compelling. Because I think the plot lines are kind of like these meandering vignettes and may or may not be worthwhile. But yeah, that was something I wanted to recommend to our
Actually,
listeners.
That got me thinking if like a little bit, this isn't super well thought out, but so the dancing, one, embarrassingly for Dirty Dancing 2, they literally say Dirty Dancing in the last song, which gross. Why would you do that? But in the original Dirty Dancing, there's like one black couple in the Dirty Dancers. Yes. And they're always dancing together. And it's not really acknowledged where this style of dancing comes from. Right. And it's all white. It's mostly white people, but they're like, you know, there's
like Italian.
It's mostly, yeah. It's mostly white people. So there's no acknowledgement of that and Dirty Dancing 2, it's obviously Cubans who are doing the dancing, and like they're not really talking about race ever. It's mostly talking about class here. And I think there's something about the erasure, like the constant cultural erasure of where, and we do this now, we still do this today, right? Of like where these particular styles of dance that become popularized or, you know, commodified by the mainstream, like where they come from and their origins and that sort of thing. So I think both movies kind of fail at that.
Yeah.
Like there's a throwaway line in Dirty Dancing about like, I don't know, kids are doing it back home in their parents' basements. And you're like, sure, that's it.
Right. And I think there's something in Dirty Dancing too about an African influence. But again, they don't ever really explain.
Yeah. The dance that Johnny, in Dirty Dancing 2, the dance that the Patrick Swayze teacher does when you first meet him is the same dance that they do with Penny, the first dance you see them doing in it's like it's the same thing. I was like, I know this dance.
That's amazing.
There's like a couple of tweaks of difference in it, but I'm like, yeah, this is the same fucking thing.
Literally, like I have been in physical therapy because I just sit too much and my back has been bothering me. I still think I could like do all of the dances from Dirty Dancing just from like some sort of muscle memory of being alone in my living room dancing along to them. I would love to hear if our listeners have the same kind of like obsession with Dirty Dancing that we do, and also have any of you watched this sequel?
Yeah, I can't recommend it. I roped my roommate into watching Dirty Dancing 2 with me last week, and I was like, you know, I know it's a bad movie, but I have a vague memory of it not being as bad as I thought it was. That is not true at all. It is worse than you would expect it to be. There's a review that was on Wikipedia from the Toronto Star that called it charmless, clumsy, and culturally offensive all at the same time. And I was like, that is accurate. Extremely. Accurate. So I cannot recommend it, but you know, if you really want to experience the whole host of Dirty Dancing offerings, give it a try.
And hey, for anyone who's worried that Jennifer Grey did not have a happy ending, she is living off that Marvel money because she is married to Clark Gregg of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So we're happy for Jennifer Grey in all things. But we will be right back to share some freakouts. What's your freakout? Now it's time to talk about what's been thrilling us, moving us, upsetting us, or infuriating us this past week. Anita, what's your freakout?
Well, my freakout is that I broke my foot and I'm fucking miserable about it because I have just been in bed for 4 weeks, so that sucks. But that means I've been watching a lot of movies. So it's not all bad. Many years ago, I had a friend who was very obsessed with Dolly Parton. And we rented all the Dolly Parton movies and we watched all of them. And then we went to see Dolly Parton live, like fucking second row front in some random casino, like 2 hours out of LA. And my friend got her water bottle with her lipstick on the straw and was like, oh my God, that's so amazing. I was like, I'm so happy for you that you have this thing that you care about. And apparently it got shook up and the lipstick got taken off when the water was on it. Anyways. Okay. So during that time, I have this memory of this movie called The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas and being like, I need to revisit this movie because I just know that Dolly Parton's in it and it's a little wacky, but I don't remember anything about it. So I rewatched it. It is from 1982 and it stars Dolly Parton and Burt Reynolds. And it is so fascinating to me because it feels like a movie that could have only been made in that moment. Mm-hmm. Like it just is like, I don't know how it got approved or how or when or why. Like there's the larger cultural context of what was being made. I think it really influenced the ability to make this movie because it's about a brothel in a small town in Texas. Dolly Parton is the madam of the brothel. And it's a very sanitized version of sex work, right? Like there's an adorable song. It's a musical, obviously. Not obviously, but it is. And there's like an adorable song where she just like, we don't let men drink in here and we wash their dicks before we have sex with them and everybody is happy and like taken care of and it's all good, you know?
All the girls love it.
They love it. And Burt Reynolds is the chief of police, and there is a like long-term affair that Dolly and Burt are having, and that's also really cute. The thing that strikes so the narrative is that everybody in town is down with the brothel. Like the mayor pays for the winners of the fucking local football Super Bowl competition to like have a night at the brothel. Like it's really wacky, but everybody's down with the brothel. They all are happy with it. It's been there forever.
The backbone of the town community. Yeah, it
really is. And then this guy who is a journalist, an investigative journalist, but is like a super religious and like inflammatory, like he's just like trying to get people riled up. He talks about how he's like uncovering the truth as he's getting dressed and like putting a sock in his pants to make his dick look bigger. Like he's like an extremely exaggerated, like fake persona. He goes after the brothel, the whorehouse, the best little whorehouse. He goes after the brothel. So that's like the narrative of it. And the chief of police is like, fuck you, don't fuck with our town. And also with my woman that nobody knows about, blah, 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 blah. The thing that I find fascinating is how like, they're never demonized. Like the sex work is never demonized. The brothel's never demonized. They are like the poor, lowly victims of like, this crusade that they don't deserve. Like it's not even like the town isn't mad at them. Like people are for supporting them. It is extremely exaggerated and over the top. And it just feels kind of, this movie feels out of nowhere a little bit to me, like it's, I don't even know if I would say it's time capsule. It's just like, what? Like, how did this get made?
Yeah. And then, I mean, it's hard not to think about like today's conservative politicians who are very vocal about what they think is over-sexualization for children and who are all artifice all the time when it comes to always backing that up. So it's like, and yet, yeah, you definitely feel like, oh, they wouldn't make this movie today. Like it's enough of a minefield kind of on either side. I heard that you had watched that, and then I recommended, and I still am going to follow up with you, that you watched the 1987 Burt Reynolds movie Rent-A-Cop, in which he is investigating a serial killer with the help of sex worker Liza Minnelli. And
I can't wait.
Another like where, why, how, when did this?
The 80s was a fascinating time,
Absolutely. I mean, I only watched Best Little Whorehouse a couple of years ago. I think similarly, I was just like, Dolly Parton's always kills it. Why don't I watch this? But she's been in some real clunkers too. There's one with Sylvester Stallone where it's called Rhinestone, and he is a New York City cabbie. She has gone to New York to advance her country music career, which seems crazy, although New York City, I think, is the #1 country music market on the planet. So she goes there, and then, like, somebody bets her, like, I bet you couldn't make the next person you see a country star. And she, like, sees cabbie Sylvester Stallone. The rest is truly one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But
I mean,
yeah,
it sounds kind of amazing, even though I believe you that it's atrocious.
Please, and no, absolutely watch it. Like, yeah, I definitely. That was also one. I think it was on the How Did This Get Made podcast, and I had to rent the DVD from the library because I couldn't find it anywhere else. So, yeah, check out some Dolly Parton always.
Yeah, always. And if you need like a breath of fresh air, Dolly Parton, just fucking do some Still Magnolias and then go back to the other ones,
Yeah. As for me, how is it 2023 and I am just watching The Fall for the first time?
No, I've never seen it.
Have you seen this?
No.
With Gillian Anderson and Jamie Dornan.
Did I?
It's like a 3-season British serial killer drama.
Yeah.
As I'm watching it, I must say that I'm waffling between, like, I'm obsessed. I can't wait to watch the next episode when I turn it off at the end of the night. But there's also, like, the sane part of me that's like, you are a simp for this in every way. So I really loved the US remake of The Killing. I haven't seen the original, so I can't speak to that. But The Fall reminds me of how The Killing felt so real. It felt like the killer is probably in my house and he knows I'm watching this show about him. Like, I'm sweating and I'm scared because it's really, really tense. And they do a great job of, like, they show you who the serial killer is right away and show his, like, process and how he's able to blend into society and then also do these horrible things. But then you have, and this all takes place in Belfast. And then you have this chief investigator who's been brought over from England, who's Gillian Anderson. And she, like, they kind of touch on the fact that she's English and that she's an outsider in Northern Ireland. And she's here to, like, be in charge. I think there's a lot of, like, gender. This, like, petite, beautiful woman is in charge of everything. And a lot of the men have problems with that. But what I also realize, back to Cindy Crawford and Katie Lang, is, boy, Gillian Anderson has
hot.
sexual chemistry with every prop, every piece of furniture, every wall, every person. So, like, there are scenes where she's like, "Get me the report," and I'm like, "Oh, how did they do that to me?"
I just finished watching the last season of Sex Education, which is not great, by the way, but
I haven't watched it, but I will.
Yeah, if you watch the other seasons, which were great, you should definitely just wrap up the show.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just bring it up because she's so hot in it. Just like, she's like struggling. She's like a new mom, whatever. And you're just like, yes.
Yeah.
Please, can this whole show just be about you?
It's like, I feel there's a part of me that's like, you are being manipulated by the fan fiction writer who created, like, they're like, oh, but we're gonna make sure that she has, like, an overtly sexual line in every episode. But also that I'm like, wow, she's so, like, that I'm looking at her and not thinking, like, wow, she's really gonna, like, solve this case. She's really dedicated to, like, making sure that these victims get avenged. Instead, I'm just like, damn, what can I help? What do you need?
Yeah. I remember, this is an extremely embarrassing, like, young person thought, but I remember watching the X-Files as a kid, or whatever, however old I was, and being like, Gillian Anderson is hot, but I don't understand why, because she's like an old whatever woman, like, I just, like, she didn't fit the sort of stereotype of hotness at the time. And, like, my young, like, pubescent brain was just like, I don't understand why.
She had newscaster hair and,
yeah,
like,
she looks terrible in it.
A corporate government suit. And she was like 27. The other thing that I've been thinking about is The Fall started in 2013, I think. And this is the role that Jamie Dornan got cast in 50 Shades of Grey out of. Not a spoiler. He's the killer. Like, it's set up from the beginning that it's going to be these two against each other. And there is something about, like, why are they making this killer so sexy? Like, why are they making him so desired by women that he meets? Why is even the scenes where you see him being violent, like, why are they kind of filming it in this way where it's like, yeah, I can see why they cast him as Christian Grey in that Twilight fanfic that was super successful. But there's also just something there where I'm like, this show is very good, but I keep asking myself, like, is this just like a like, this is a little bit of a fantasy that I think you're supposed to feel a little uncomfortable by. And that's interesting. Whether or not that makes it like a better show or a worse show, I don't know. That's kind of the thing. That is our show for today. Anita, where can people find you?
I can be found in my bed with a broken foot.
Boo, boo.
I am Anita Sarkeesian on all the things. So Twitter, if that's a thing still, Instagram, Blue Sky. And my website is anitasarkeesian.com, which is going to get a little minor revamp soon.
Cool. I'm Kat Spada. You can find me at cat_EX_Machina on Twitter. And be sure to follow Feminist Frequency at FemFreak. If you are a Patreon subscriber, be sure to stick around for the bonus episode where we're going to talk about horror and scary media stuff because it's October. And also, if you're a Patreon subscriber, check out the Discord. We are doing more live events, watch-alongs. We did an AMA, doing some fun stuff. So make sure to engage with everyone there. And if you like the show, please help other people find it by subscribing, rating, and commenting on your favorite podcast app. Anita, thank you so much for coming back. And
so excited to be here, always.
Thanks for listening, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.